So in today's video I am going to be making some Christmas cards. I've bought some like card from Hobbycraft and I'm going to be designing some cards for Christmas. So if you want to see that, then keep on watching.
So for this I went and bought some cards and envelopes from Hobbycraft. I bought a pack of 50. These are just like normal sized cards, I believe, a 5x7 I think. So I was just doing my sketching here. So the first one I did was a bauble design with 3 different baubles, and then I did one with some LED lights, and then I did this one with a little bow and some candy canes, and then I did, was that all of them? No, I did one with some berries as well. So I was originally going to do mistletoe, but then I thought obviously mistletoe is white usually, and then obviously with a white card I just kind of wanted a little bit of contrast, so I went and did some red berries and green leaves instead. Just thought it still looked quite Christmassy, just, you know, quite seasonal. I suppose I could have really done these as holly, but I didn't really think about it until afterwards. So here I just went in with my watercolour. So I had a watercolour paintbrush, which you just keep like the water in the middle, and then as you squeeze it the water comes out more. So I used this to paint each one of these. So I started off with the ribbon on the candy cane, which I wanted to do red, just to tie in with like the pinky red that I was going to use on the actual candy cane itself. So I just went over with a block colour of red first of all, and then just kind of, you know, how watercolour works, used a more watery solution to kind of blend and make a lighter colour to blend into. So I just did this first, and then obviously I went in and added some shadows afterwards, but before that I went in and did the red on the candy cane. So I did quite big gaps of white and then the red or pink stripes on the candy canes. I kind of did it, I didn't want to do it as bold as the actual ribbon, but I think most of it ended up that way a little bit, which is why I kind of went in afterwards and added some shadows onto the ribbon so that it didn't all look exactly the same. So I just kept going on all of these until I just kind of filled in those red stripes, and then I went in with like a really light red, sort of almost pink, just to add some shadows underneath that red on where the white would be, just to add a little bit more depth and definition to the actual candy canes itself, just to stop them from being so flat. And then here is where I went back over with a deeper red, just to kind of make that ribbon stand out a little bit more. And then after that I think I added a little bit of black to it, just to create some actual like depth and shadows. So this was more of like a purpley red, which I then blended out mostly. Getting these colours right was actually quite difficult, especially since this paper was not actually watercolour paper, as you can probably see. So that was probably a bit of a mistake. I probably should have done this on watercolour paper and then scanned them and then put them onto the cards, but I just did the design straight onto a card. But yeah, here I just used a little bit of black just to add a little bit more definition to this little bit, and then coming out of where the bow is actually tied in the middle, I did a little bit more through there as well, and then just added a few highlights into that bit, just to kind of finish it off. And then as usual just blending it as much as I possibly can. So I then moved on to the berry and leaf one. So I started out with a very light green, because I knew I wanted to add some darker green in, just to add some shadows in, but I kept rubbing the design out as I went with this, because obviously it's such a lighter colour. I knew that the pencil would show through if not, and it's actually quite hard to rub a pencil out after you've already painted over it. So that's the reason why I kept doing that. So I just did that all over. I did all of the leaves before I did anything else, and then I went back over with the darker green, as you can see now, just to add some like what are they called, like the vein bits that go through the middle. I'm pretty sure they're not called that, but I have no idea. But yeah, I did that just throughout, just to add some texture and just a little bit more definition to the leaves rather than just having green blobs. And then I went in with the red berries. So here I just used the same red that I'd used on the bow and on the candy canes. So I just went through and added red berries into each of these, just where I kind of wanted them. I kind of followed where the pencil marks were, but obviously as I put colour in, I added a few extras in, took a few away, and just kind of decided where I wanted them to go. And then I added some black outlines with a black pen just to add some more details, and all of the lines I did in black pen as well, just to make that stand out a little bit more rather than brown. So yeah, I did that, and then on each berry I added a little dot on there as well, just for a little bit more detail. And then with the leaves I went back through and I stippled some black dots along, like on there I added some black lines, and then I just stippled some black dots through for a little bit more shadow, a little bit more texture and definition as well. So I just went through all of those and added just what I kind of thought each one needed. Not all of them are the same, not all of them have been added like that. As you'll see in a minute, quite a lot of them are quite different from each other, but I did that just to add some different texture and just to make sure that not every leaf actually looked the same. So I just worked my way down, adding the definition to the leaves and the branches in together. So yeah, I just carried on doing that. So once I'd done that, I then went back through and I added some extra weight to some of the lines, just along the branches, just to make the branches look a little bit thicker, and just to give more shape to them rather than just like a long line. And then I went and added through some extra weight to some of the lines on the leaves and on the berries as well, just to again add a little bit more definition, a little bit more depth, and just really something extra for the eye to look at rather than just quite a flat picture. It just adds a little bit more definition. So I went through and did this to all of them before finishing it up. So yeah, I just went through and added some extra lines. So the next one that I moved on to after this was the bauble one, which was the first one that I actually sketched. I didn't actually include it in this, but I actually had a practice run of this one just to kind of see how the watercolours would go, and this was just to kind of help me decide whether I actually wanted to go ahead with watercolours or if I wanted to use coloured pencil or acrylic. That I just kind of used that as a bit of a trial. So my first one that I did was the bauble on the right, which I did yellow. So I just worked from the outside, just on one side, and it just carried on in so that there was a bit of a higher highlight on one side just to make it look more 3D. So as you can see on this red one as well, I did the same thing. I worked from the left hand side and I made it kind of darker and heavier on the left hand side, working over to the right hand side to give a higher highlight to make it look more 3D. And then the last one I did was this green one, which I started out with quite like a washed out green, but I went over afterwards with a darker or brighter green, just to kind of make it stand out a little bit more. Yeah, to kind of stop it looking all washed out and muddy. So yeah, you can see that green here, and I just did the same thing, just worked from the left hand side so that again the light source on all three of these is all coming from the same direction, so that they all tie into each other and they all look cohesive together. And then I went through afterwards and added some more shadows, just with a darker yellow on this one, just to kind of finish these off a little bit. And then on this one I added a darker red, because obviously they do look a little bit different once they've dried. So on all of these I did go back through and add some darker shades, just to finish it off really after it had dried. And then I went through with a black pen, just to add the strings, but I did also add some gold watercolour on top, just to look like the little things on top of baubles that they attach like the strings to. So I added those on with some gold watercolour, and then I went back through with that black pen just to add some more definition to the actual baubles and to the top, and obviously to add those strings as well. So I added those, and then I outlined the little bits on top, and then I kind of went around the baubles, but I didn't want to go around them completely perfectly. But while I was trying to kind of figure out where that was going to go, I added the highlights, because the highlights were going to play a part into how they were outlined, because I didn't want the highlights to go through the outline afterwards. So I made sure to add in a little highlight beforehand, and then I outlined them all. So as you can see, all of the outlines kind of overlap each other, and just kind of give it a little bit more something to look at rather than just 3 balls on a page, really. So yeah, I really like the look of that, which is obviously why I went through and did it on all 3 of those, but I did practice that on one before just to kind of see how it would look. So I then moved on to the last one, which was the LED lights. So I just chose some colours for the lights first of all. This one I chose to do blue, and then I think the bottom one I did blue as well. So I used like a darker blue on the actual lights, and then used a really washed out watery blue as a ring around it, just to kind of look like the lights are actually glowing. So I used that around, which, to be fair, they probably shouldn't have been that round, thinking of how the actual light is, but that's how they ended up. So yeah, the light down the bottom was also a blue colour. I don't actually think it ended up being exactly the same shade of blue, but that's okay. Well, it's handmade, so we'll just ignore that, and we'll just pretend it was supposed to be like that. So yeah, I just did that same technique on all of these lights, just with the washed out colour. This one was a little bit darker than I had anticipated, but obviously I just went through with a little bit more water just to try and wash it out a little bit more. And obviously they're not perfect circles either, but again, it's handmade, we'll pretend it's supposed to be that way. So I then went through with some darker blue just to add some more like depth and shadows, and again to try and help it look like it was actually glowing. So I went through with that and then just blended it through a little bit, just to kind of help with that. And then I think I did a red light. I'm trying to think now. I think I did a red light and a green light, or a green light and a red light. So the next one I did was the green light. So I just went through and did exactly the same thing, just with a green colour. So I did a darker green and then just a more washed out green around to look like the light was glowing. And then I obviously did some shadows on that one as well, with just some darker green. The darker green bled a little bit, so I did kind of have to go through afterwards and just clean that up a little bit, but that's okay. So just went through like that, and then the last one I did was a red one. As you can see, went through with the red watercolour, just went through, and then did a washed out red as well. And then just for the strings, I went through with that black pen again. But I also used, I think it was a silver watercolour for the bits that the light bulbs actually screw into, and then I just outlined those and did some little detailed bits in with those with the black pen. So yeah, you can see here I just used a silver watercolour, which actually ended up looking a little bit more grey. It definitely looked a little bit more grey after it had been scanned and then printed, but that's okay. I think they came out quite well either way. So I used that, and then just a darker colour, a darker almost black, like a charcoaly grey, and then dropped some more colour right in the middle. So I did that, and then I used some white highlights just to kind of blend that out a little bit more, just to kind of make it look a little bit more metallic and a little bit more like the bits we actually screw light bulbs into. And then I just went through and did a little highlight on each of the lights, again just to try and make it look like they were actually turned on. And then, like I said, I went through with that black pen just to make the wire just to loop it all together, and then I outlined each of the lights and the like fitting bit with black pen as well, just to finish it off a little bit more, and I think this definitely brought the whole piece together and made it look complete, especially with those little lines and the little details on the actual fitting of the light. I thought they just looked really good like that. So yeah, I just went through and finished all of those off in the same way, and then obviously just looped the light back, or the string back, to how it was as well. So yeah, that was all of them complete, but since then I have actually made a gingerbread card as well, and all of these will be available on my Etsy, which will be linked below.
So these are the cards that I came up with. So I've got this bauble one, candy cane one, this like berry one, and then these fairy lights. So yeah, these are all of my designs that I came up with. They are actually available on my Etsy if you wanted to take a look. But yeah, I'm probably going to do some more designs in the future, so keep an eye out on my Etsy for those. Link will be in the description. But other than that, make sure to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.